It's 12:01 here in Zurich, Switzerland, and we have attendees from all over Europe. Hello, good day, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Supercharge Your Finance Operation with RPA and AI. My name is Bernardin General Lau, and I'm Director of Regional Partner Relations at IMA, the Institute of Management Accountants based in Zurich. Let's start. Before we progress, I would like to inform you that this event is being recorded, and by participating, you are giving your consent to the recording. Please follow basic rules of internet etiquette during the entire event in the chat, and especially when asking a question. So non-compliance with internet etiquette will result in a removal from the event. If you happen to experience technical difficulty, please try logging on again using the event link in the Zoom confirmation email. And in case we experience any technical difficulties, please be patient and stay online for up to 10 minutes until the issue is resolved. Of course, we would communicate further steps in the unlikely event of technical problems. Just a brief introduction about IMA. We are one of the largest and most respected associations focused exclusively on advancing the management accounting profession. We are proud to support our members and the profession through research, the CMA, Certified Management Accountant Program, continuing education, networking, and advocacy of the highest ethical business practices. Our members are located all over the world and are supported regionally out of offices that you see on this map. And together with the Europe team located in Amsterdam and Zurich, we work with corporations, universities, students, partner associations, course providers, members, and chapter leaders, and other stakeholders all across the region. We would like to thank our sponsor, UiPath, for partnering with us for today's webinar. UiPath offers an end-to-end platform for automation, combining the leading RPA solution with a full suite of capabilities and techs like AI, process mining, and cloud to enable every organization to rapidly scale digital business operations. UiPath believes in using the transformative power of automation to liberate the boundless potential of people. We look forward to learning more about the how in the next hour. And again, thank you for partnering with IMA. Just a quick look at the agenda, which is pretty much clear cut. After my opening remarks, we shall move on to the panel discussion, Finance Innovation with AI and RPA, until almost the top of the hour before leaving the latter 10 minutes open for a Q&A. Please feel free to post your questions via the Q&A function of Zoom so that these can be filled in accordingly. I have the pleasure of introducing my colleague as today's panel chair, Alain Mulder. Alain Mulder is IMA Senior Director of Europe Operations and is based out of the IMA's Amsterdam office. Alain is responsible for IMA's operations in Europe and, of course, for the growth of the CMA, Certified Management Accountant Program in Europe. A few months ago, Alain was nominated for the Executive Director of the Year award by the Association of Association Executives. Good to have you with us, Alain. Moving on to our panelists for today. First, I have the pleasure of introducing Boris Krumrei. Boris is the Global VP Automation Solutions at UiPath and is responsible to drive the UiPath automation innovation agenda to reboot work with customers and partners, showing the art of the possible of cognitive automation at scale. Boris invented and runs the UiPath Immersion Labs, which he describes as the automation kitchen to inspire businesses exploring new customer and work experiences. Boris has a wealth of IT and management experience, and we look forward to hearing about such in a panel discussion today. Thank you for being with us today, Boris. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing Narayanan Vajanasan. Narayanan is Head of Business Insights at ACCA, the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, and comments on issues pertinent to emerging technologies and technology policy. He led on ACCA's report on blockchain, machine learning, where he also developed training for finance professionals, and digital ethics. Narayanan also oversees a team of policy specialists in areas including sustainability, economics, and the public sector. Thank you for being with us today, Narayanan.
Pleasure.
Last but definitely not least, I have the pleasure of introducing a third panelist, Christopher Argent. Christopher is the founder and MD of GenerationCFO.com and creator of the digital finance function model. He works with CFOs and finance leaders to inspire and educate their teams on digital finance change, agility, and new digital finance skills, talent, and tech. He splits his time between industry, digital finance function training, and being editor of GenerationCFO.com. Thank you for joining the panel today, Christopher.
Thank you.
And without further ado, I will now pass it on to Alon Mulder to kick off the panel session. Alon, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Bernard, and I'm really looking forward to this panel. And also thanks for the introductions. It's always strange to listen to your own bio. But let's start with the panel because we have so many great experts here. But before we do, IMA recently released a report which spotlights some of the major trends anticipated for the finance and accounting profession this year. And that perfectly relates also with today's webinar. The report includes mega trends, which are factors that will shift the focus and dynamics of the profession. And as finance professionals, you will be impacted by these trends. So it's very important that you are aware of these changes that will be or actually are already in the process of occurring. So many of these trends we published at once we have been hearing about for actually quite a while. But are likely to grow in importance this year as organizations actually need to deal with the COVID ongoing pandemic. Of course, we hope it will end very soon, but we also face challenges in implementing technology. We need to respond to demands like, for example, diverse workforce and also threats by the climate change. But also, according to McKinsey Research, actually 76% of the CFOs decided to increase the investment in technology due to COVID-19. And as we know, 85% of all RPA projects start with the finance department, and this will impact our profession. So how do you as a finance professional or decision maker need to respond to all this? How will it impact skills and how can you supercharge your finance operation with RPA and AI? That is what we will discuss with today's panel. And like Bernardine already introduced them with experts from ACCA, UiPath, and Generation CFO. Welcome everyone, and I'm very excited to have you all here joining us today in this panel.
Thank you, Alan.
Of course, Bernardine already did an introduction. Maybe let's start with a quick introduction around a few seconds for each, and then we kick off with all the questions. Chris, shall we start with you?
Yeah, so my name's Chris Argent from Generation CFO. It's great to be part of this discussion today. You know, as much as we talk about sort of change and transformation and what needs to happen, I think the accounting and finance profession still has a long way to go in terms of its learning and its development in this area. So I'm super pleased to be part of this discussion to educate people.
Thank you. Great. Boris?
Yeah, hi, I'm Boris Crumray. I'm the VP for Automation Innovations. I started in UiPath, I think, more than 4 years ago as Chief Robotics Officer, as we were at that size, like roughly over 120 people. And I was kind of laying out the roadmap together with Daniel, Dennis, and so forth in the very early stage. And until we've grown very, very fast due to the demand. Then kind of building the idea of the immersion lab where it's all about, you know, showing, not just telling. And actually also kind of trying to involving the people to really kind of make that abstract view of automation far more tangible for anyone, right? Yeah, with that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Ariane, let's start with you.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you for setting up this wonderful discussion. It's a pleasure to connect with you and with all of these very distinguished fellow panelists. I'm Narayanan. I work with the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, the ACCA. I'm very interested in the impact of emerging technologies and also what that means in terms of education skills and the impact that the professional accountant of the future can have and will have. I'm also interested in, where possible, helping our members and others across the profession think about this in a practical, hands-on way. So we're also interested in looking at the research that we do and see if we can help with creating learning products that will help finance and accountancy professionals engage more. So, for example, we're working with in areas like creating very simple ways of interfacing with machine learning, with artificial intelligence, with very simple areas of Python coding, where you don't need to be an expert, but it allows you to start understanding and demystifying some of these things and some of the terminology. But I'm sure there's more for that later. Thank you.
Yeah, great. And you already mentioned the research. IMA and ACCA do a lot of research together, so that's also something we can discuss during this webinar. Thank you so much. And we encourage you to ask any questions, of course, during the webinar, but please use the Q&A option and not the chat function. And then I will ask the questions to our panelists. Well, let's now actually start with the panel, because we all know that the CFO is actually the pinnacle of many finance functions, as we know, and it's a role that places the accountancy and finance professional at the forefront of many stakeholders' minds when considering how an entity conducts its financial affairs. But the traditional role of the guardian of an entity's finance has been superseded by a new reality. One where the CFO has a broader function across the organization and actually as a front runner in the finance transformation. Like I already mentioned, together with ACCA, we conducted research to the future role of the CFO and how technology is impacting the profession was actually one of the outcomes and also something we discussed during the roundtables for this webinar. And of course, I'm very much interested in the future skill set. Jan, I think that's a perfect question for you. What do you see as the future skill set for the CFO?
Thank you, Alan. And yes, I mean, with reference to that report, I think that was a really the CFO of the future, as it was called, that ACCA and IMA worked on together. And I think, there are some important strands there. I think one thing which is very clear is that we're talking not about a substitution, but we're talking about internalizing a few different things. So there are issues around, there are responsibilities around safeguarding, responsibilities around reporting, which are within that purview of the CFO. But then there are lots of other things which are becoming extremely important as we look ahead, around the ability to really look ahead and bring business relevant insights to how the future direction of the organization needs to be mapped. And I think also really understanding how the role of the CFO relates to the wider risk landscape within which the organization is operating, and understanding the role of digital, both as an opportunity and in terms of things like cybersecurity and how that links to understanding the widest possible kind of risk landscape within which the organization is operating. So I think the role of the CFO, the good news is that it's getting very, very interesting, and there's more and more in it. But I think the challenging bit is that it also means that there is much more of a need to understand the contribution to the organization in a much broader way. I think there's a lot more to it than just, I think somebody said earlier on in this discussion or in the presentation, around much more than just the numbers and understanding the numbers in and of themselves. It's how those numbers interconnect with the operations of the organization, how they interconnect with the strategy of the organization, and how they interconnect with the risk landscape of the organization in a really proactive way, in that really forward-looking way. I think that it's very clear. It's very, very clear that is absolutely central.
Yeah, it's more becoming a business part and telling the story behind the numbers. And what do you see as the impact of RPA AI on the finance function and accounting function, of course?
Sure. I mean, we look at this on an ongoing basis, and I'm personally very interested in AI in particular. But across the piece, we look at emerging technologies. We actually, to that question, we looked at a global survey last year, which we ran with EY, the professional services firm, and we asked about, I think it was about 4,000 accounting and finance professionals around the world. And what we found was at the moment, you're looking certainly for AI. I don't recall the exact number for RPA, but for AI, it was about, I think it was just over 1 in 10. It was about 12%. This is bearing in mind accountancy finance professionals in large, small organizations around the world across all countries. So that was about 1 in 10 in terms of currently they're using it in their workplace in some way. But interestingly, we also asked them, by the time the 2020s are over, end of this decade, what is your expectation? And that number was 9 in 10. So even if you discount for the fact that people are very optimistic about future adoption, that's still a huge expected increase. And I think the one thing we can take away very safely from that is that there is a market expectation that this stuff is moving very firmly from the lab into production. If you're moving from 1 in 10 to 9 in 10, it's going to become a reality for the vast majority of people around the world.
Yeah, great. But let's see from an educational angle. How does that reflect on implementing AI in accountancy? What do people need to change?
That's a very good question, and I think there are some really important things here, because one of the things is you need to understand, first of all, conceptually what's going on with AI, so that you don't misinterpret the outputs that it's giving you. This is a probabilistic output, and it's important to understand that. And it's giving you probabilistic points of view based on bottom-up data analysis, trends in the data. Which is very different to how traditional programming software works, where a human would decide, these are the rules within which the data will be analyzed. So it's that is the learning bit within the machine learning. It's learning from the data itself, and that has implications. I think to your question about learning and education, there are a few different aspects, and I'm involved with a few of them personally. One is just understanding how an algorithm actually works. If you don't understand that, you will misinterpret the result. So there's a bit about, if you're looking for fraud, let's make it more practical. If you're looking for fraud in the data, for example, the way a machine learning algorithm would analyze that is by understanding the characteristics of the data itself and what types of characteristics have been probabilistically more successful at forecasting fraud. That's very different from someone setting a rule right at the beginning to say, if a certain transaction occurs out of hours, then flag it for fraud and it's more likely for fraud, because that might not be something that's borne out in the data. Now, the two may converge in some places and diverge in others, but the way they're arriving at deciding whether something is fraudulent or not is different. So that means there's a need to educate around how these things work. There's a need to educate around what it means for ethics. You can't, I think, as an accountancy and finance professional, take the view that, the AI is intelligent, the AI is going to figure it out. That's it, I'm done, thank you. Not so simple. The accountability continues to reside with the individual. And so there is a big piece around AI ethics and about understanding how to apply and deploy AI systems in an ethical manner. And I think there's also a piece around strategy, because when you're deploying AI systems across in an organization, it's not like taking a single piece of tech which resides inside one system in one part of an organization. It's using AI is about data, and the data is distributed across the organization. And so you need to have a leadership level view about what your AI strategy is and how you're deploying AI across your organization and using your data so that it's not caught in silos in different parts of the organization. It's very much a distributed deployment model, I would say. So there are lots of things to consider.
Thanks, great answer. And I already see a question in the Q&A. You don't have to wait till the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them. I already see one question from Jan. It's about finance skills, etc. It's open to all panelists, of course, to answer. You hear a lot about new skills and competencies for finance to adapt, but the core finance skills seem to remain important as well. How can we balance this in a way that we are not stacking skills beyond what people can manage?
I can take that one. I think it's a great question, and it sort of highlights, you know, I love what the ACCA are doing, and I love, you know, the overview that, you know, Naranian just gave there. But there's a sort of, the flip side to this is that you have people in their roles right now in a fairly complex, maybe low data, low tech environment, wondering, how do I bridge this gap? You know, how do I go on this journey? And you know, we need to consider the people and the education journey and the change element of this technology, because you know, in the West, I think it's fair to say that, you know, we've always teed up AI as something that might take over the world and be a fairly negative thing. In the East, it's actually quite different. You know, they love their robots, and they welcome AI principles. But I think over here we need to help people engage with it, which is getting much closer to the problem. You know, understanding what AI is, understanding the difference between AI as a genre, if you like, and machine learning and deep learning, and what's relevant for the finance team. Because, you know, to go back to the question, one of the hot questions that we were asked, you know, we run sort of meetups and surveys through Gen CFO all around the digital change. And it was, do I need to learn Python or not? You know, do I need to become a programmer? Should I be a coder? And, you know, our advice is, you know, generally no, because that's a whole career in itself. You know, the Harvard Business Review might have said that data science is the sexiest job in the world, and that might be more appealing than being an accountant. I don't know, but it's a whole different career. So I think the first step is to really just understand the basics, to understand definitions, to get our understanding of what, you know, the conversation today, what's the difference between, say, RPA, robot process automation, versus AI, to understand, say, you know, the levels of AI. So, you know, people are jump to this sort of super intelligent AI kind of discussion, whereas actually 99% of all use cases right now are very narrow AI use cases. It's automating one decision, it's automating one process, even end to end. You know, that's still a very narrow use of AI. And then when it comes to things like, you know, machine learning, you know, in the past, I've gone from finance to setting up analytics teams within sort of big corporates, and now doing Gen CFO. You know, understanding how machine learning works and what it means to you as an accountant and as a finance person, because I don't think we're asking you to be, you know, data scientists or developers. We're asking you to be domain experts in these projects. We're asking you to be, you know, to bring the context, to bring the business understanding, to understand the data that's going to be used within these projects, not actually to run these projects as a whole. So I think we need to get much closer to it with basic education, basic training, to really, you know, understand it, and then maybe make a decision, is this for me or not? Because some people aren't going to want to go on this journey, even if it is the future, as the ACCA show in their research. Some people, you know, will love it. And I'm not saying there's a generational gap there, but we do see, you know, new people in our community really, you know, loving the idea of using data, using visualization, you know, being more tech savvy, AI savvy. And we're also seeing leadership saying, I do want to transform, but I just need to understand how.
As a vendor,
Great.
chip in here. You know, it's always been our drive to make it as simple as possible, not to overwhelm people of learning a complicated new skill, like going as far as learning Python or complex programming language whatsoever. if we would have done that or expected that, our product, we would have never grown that fast. In fact, it was more like people discovering it, seeing that they can do it themselves for kind of the kind of robotic tasks they do, and see how easy it was. And so that encouraged them. And then they go back to their management and said, yeah, I did this. I didn't need even IT to help me. And so this kind of, is the tipping point. So from a vendor perspective, everything is geared towards what we call democratization. So making it as easy as possible. We don't force anyone to kind of apply or deep dive into those skills to kind of create their own automations, but we give them also tools so that they can document those very easily so that somebody else, a specialist, could be implementing them. So it's kind of allowing both paths. But the key essence will be like this. If you think about productivity tools like Excel sheets, and I'm sure the people from this profession absolutely are maybe, some are super experts, some are less experts, but everyone knows how to use it. And everyone uses it in their daily operations for productivity reasons. In the same way, you have to be able to use automation. And automation's tools should be as simple as that to be applied. Because, the bad news are the role as an accountant will completely change going forward in a sense of it's not a classical accountant. You will have to have the skills to understand exactly what's happening, all the basics around accountancy. It's the same way as a computer scientist like me, I don't need to know assembler code anymore and how maybe an operating system functions, but well, I need to know the principles. I need to know what it does in the basics concept to actually be able to understand, kind of the higher levels of any kind of algorithms or whatsoever. So in the same sense, I need to know my craft. I need to know that basis. But the applying automation is in the same way just another productivity method tool using Excel today for your daily operation. That's how it should be targeted. And then we come to AI. It's absolutely right that this particular area, you're dealing with data, you're dealing with numbers, it's all about checking consistencies and so forth, linking the numbers and so forth. Ideal for using something with automation because you're using so much data and it's becoming more complex as we go, right? We have more systems, more digital data. How on earth are you going to check all this and ensure that without having tools like automation? When it comes to AI, now you can actually do something more with it. And that's exactly what Narayan has said. It's like, you have to understand the algorithm because in the end of the day, someone is going to kind of challenge you and ask you, well, how do you know that the algorithm is right? How do you know it's actually, everything you do in this profession needs to be auditable, compliant. If you apply a deep learning model that just learned by oodles of data and you don't even know how it comes to certain conclusions, that's a big challenge, right? So you're applying it in a narrow sense, exactly like Christopher has said. You can't, it's not going to be kind of the overwhelming complex AI that does everything by itself. So that's not going to happen. It's going to be bit by bit. But consider automation and AI as tools that you're going to use for your future. And yes, it may be that 40% of your tasks are certainly that are kind of very like taking data from system A to B, creating reports and all that. That may be already kind of you learn how to create those automations or use those automations to create those. So now you have more time to actually learn these additional skills that you're going to use for understanding, kind of interdependencies, predicting certain, kind of trends and so forth. So the role as the accountant is that it's going to change and becoming more and more towards like, like an analyst, like a financial analyst kind of thing. So I think in long term, your role in that area is just becoming more sexier.
Yeah, great. And then
And then if
One
I can
question
just,
before we really take before we take a deep dive in RPA and AI, Boris, can you maybe give us a 2-minute introduction for the people who are not that up to speed yet with RPA and AI, what it exactly is, how they connect with each other, and maybe also what they can do for the companies?
Right. So robotic process automation is basically simulating what a human does on a computer, right? So the robot has to be so intelligent that it understands every element on the screen in a way like we understand every object on the screen, like what's the push button, what's a table, what's, because the biggest challenge is always that it is as reliable as possible. So if the application changes, that the robot doesn't fall over, the workflow stops. And that's exactly where now the technology that we have has become so sophisticated or so advanced that it doesn't happen. It's very, very reliable, and it can handle a lot of transaction. So in this sense, all the tasks that you're doing for taking data here from this system, from that system, doing something, sending it off, all these things that have kind of a standard procedure, you can automate. And the systems don't know that it's a robot or a human. So just a thing. Sorry. So that's kind of the essence of it. And we even apply computer vision to it, meaning we're not just saying, okay, on this corner, when the label says company, extract what's next to that label, and to be sure that it's really the right one, connect whether above it has the screen number XYZ. So that's kind of one basic way of creating it very reliable, but we also added computer vision. So in the same way as you use driverless cars and identifying objects, our robot identifies the objects on the screen, and so interprets the screen in the same way as a human and takes those informations to make it very, very reliable. So that's the key thing. And you can have the robot running kind of in the background, 7x24 in its own environment, it could be like a user. You can call it Robbie or whatever name you want. I mean, I think NASA called theirs first George Washington, and then they decided, because of the gender-related thing, maybe give it some Apollo name or something like that. So it's kind of, but that helps people to actually understand how to work with robots, because it's like another person, like another twin. And the new thing now is that you can create a robot or have the robot running on your own desktop and really running in its separate window. So it can you can work in parallel. You can hand it over things, and it can ask you for information and so forth. And it really is like your digital twin in that sense. And that really changes life dramatically. And we also provide the ability of making it very easy for you to create your own automation flow and automation, kind of operation. So when you think of all that, how many reports you have to put together in Excel sheets and collect data here and there and sync them up and update, this is, a lot of that work you have in your job. These things you can automate, and you even learn how in a simple way you can really create them yourself without being a big programmer whatsoever. We're not targeting for the people to self-automate things in a way that that requires a real deep technical skill. It's really for these kind of what we call swivel chair activities. So you take a data here and so forth and put that together and send out something whatsoever. So that's in essence what RPA does. Now, how does it connect with AI? Well, as I already mentioned, in the core of the robot itself and identifying the objects and so forth, if you use computer vision, that's AI. Taking documents, all the paper that has been created for humans to work with, or also for compliance reasons need to be paper, to be able to extract that information and process that information into structured data, that's another big area that we're covering as well. So that's part of what we call document understanding, and it's part of our core platform. To make predictions about whether, in the cash collection process, whether, how many customers are going to, be able to pay in time, those algorithms, to be able to kind of custom build algorithms like that and just put them into the workflow like an input-output model, that's also something that the automation platform provides. So in a way, the AI component provides a thinking element, and the action element is basically the robot. So by adding that AI component and making it an integral part of our platform that can run on-prem, meaning in your own data center and in the cloud, it really gives you all the flexibility of making those automations more tangible, creating those models that Narayan has spoken about, to just integrate them into your automation flow, come up with recommendations or clustering information and doing more of the kind of analytics type of work. All that is the full flexibility. So the AI component is the thinking element that gives your robots even a kind of meaningful actions. But the other AI part of it is the whole cognitive area. It's about robots being able to understand the information that was made for people to work with. So if you want your robot to be able to process the information that was meant for people, there you need the other AI component to be able to do that. And that's also what we're covering. So this is how AI and RPA belongs together. And to be honest, a platform today, that's why I'm constantly saying platform. Today, automation, I mean, there was even a term like intelligent automation. If you add AI and RPA, to be honest, for us, in 5 years, it's all automation. No one will talk about stupid automation. It doesn't exist. So this is the whole point. Automation, the AI will always be an integrated part of automation, and RPA is one part of automation. You need an entire platform with multiple features that address the transformational requirements at scale of our customers.
Yeah, it also sounds very cool to have a digital twin, I need to say. So I'm looking forward to that. One question we got is, what could be challenges during and after the implementation of RPA in the organization?
Well, I think the key thing you need to think about is before you do that, think about your new operating model. You're turning everything into digital. The tasks that people have been doing are now becoming workflows and robots. And so how does that work? How does the humans work together with these robots? How does how do they access data and operate? How do they do handovers? How do you so you have to think about how is your future operating model looking like before you actually go on that journey. That's the kind of first important thing. And then you need to think about who will take care of all these automations. It can't be purely IT people. You need people who have the domain knowledge, right? So all these things you need to address and think about. And then thirdly, think about change management. I come from the outsourcing business originally. So I did large service transition programs, knowledge transfer. And you have the same challenge here. You have knowledge transfer to robots, but then you also need an organization that looks after this, maintains it, operates it, and so forth. And you need to have a clear ownership around this. So these things need to be thought about if you're going on the scalability journey.
I think there's another impact as well, specific to finance and accounting, which, we can talk in quite generic terms when it comes to sort of the capability, because it is a generic capability. It's just we're trying to apply it to accounting and finance. And I think, specifically in finance, we're actually struggling with agility. And I think if we look at the last year and we really sort of do a debrief on the last year, we need to improve our agility, and that might mean that we need to work in a slightly different way. It's been a hard year, really successful year, I think, in general for finance and accounting people, but it's been a hard year. So what does it mean in terms of improving agility in this sort of change? And I think if we're really honest, a lot of finance teams are stuck in this data collection, data processing world, which means that we're quite isolated from the business. So arguably this capability can help with moving us out of that, moving us, to apply our expertise, to actually work with the business, to make sure that we understand what's happening in the wider business. And there's obviously been a trend for a long time about finance business partners But in terms of, that community and the CFO, we can see the direction. More and more people are going from CFO to CEO. So it's getting out of this data collection, data processing, being able to demonstrate our management. And the good thing is that that world is very difficult to automate. So let's just fit things into the right sort of boxes. The human stuff, let's apply our expertise, let's manage relationships, let's manage people. That's not ever going to be done by a super AI anytime soon. The data processing, the data collection, the automation of information and insight, let's fix that. And that's where this capability comes in. And the impact is our roles will change, our understanding of this will change, but also finance in a good way will be less isolated in the business. We'll really be working with others. We'll have a more interesting role. We'll be able to demonstrate our value. And, if you've gone through university and you've qualified as an accountant and you've learned your craft, you want to be out there in the business making a difference. You don't want to be stuck behind a desk, doing 50, 60-hour weeks stuck in spreadsheets. I would argue. So yeah.
I mean, I completely agree, and I just wanted to sort of reinforce really what both Chris and Boris were saying, because I think it's important not to lose the wood for the trees here. So when we talk about skills, to your original question, Alan, about skills and education, and when we talk about things like coding, the idea is not to become a coder. It's about having an appreciation for a programmatic way of thinking. If this happens, do this. If that happens, do that, to understand how these systems operate in the background. Because to be honest, in 10 years, Python might be replaced by something else. It might not even be there. So the idea is not to become the world's greatest expert in Python. That's probably useless for a professional accountant. But what is useful is just understanding the programmatic way of thinking and how it deals with data and what it's doing, so that it doesn't feel like some magical, mystical world that you can never, ever hope to understand. So one of the things we talk about, which speaks to what Chris was just saying, is how can you use, it's just a tool. How can you use it to make your Excel more efficient? How can you use it to make Excel on steroids so that you have more time to think about the business insight stuff, to think about the relationship stuff, to think about the so what from what is emerging from all this data? Because otherwise it's just a lot of data and you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, it's actually what you're saying. It's key and essential to start using technology in order to become a successful business partner for your organization. We have another question from Edwin. I will read it out loud. Agree to Boris' answer, but in addition, before or during organizations start to use RPA, AI, ML, they need to be aware of the digitalization shift. In other words, the success depends on how we translate why man and machine need to work together. Why do we need to be agile? Why do we want to lose zombie tasks, etc.? What's your view on that?
Yeah, so first of all, the amount of data we're dealing with is significantly increased. So just look at, in the past, maybe we responded to emails and email was the way, even before that it was fax machines, right? But now it's email, it's chat channels, it's social media, it's whatever. So it's even more than that. And there are special systems to exchange data and whatsoever. So it has significantly increased. How do you want to manage all that without having the automation? Secondly, I totally agree with that point of view. It is, of course, in order to evangelize and create awareness of what it can do, you have to start doing these simple examples or smaller pilots. And he's absolutely right. Edwin is absolutely right by saying, that's something that you need to start off with, just if you're at the very early stage. That's also a reason how we grew, because the people in the business units were actually downloading our software, the community edition, creating those automations and having the first success in doing that. And by showing that to all the others, everybody said, well, obviously I don't need to be an IT person to do this. well, why can't we do this? And then when I went to IT was like, ooh, wait a minute, shadow IT, go away. You know, we want this. You're not thinking scale here, and they're right, of course, from a scalability perspective, from kind of compliance perspective. There's a lot more to it, and there's a reason why it takes longer for them than kind of for the business unit or the person in the business unit. But bringing those worlds together to enable people to do actually more and take those mundane tasks out of their operation, and combining that with the control and compliance that IT has, and bringing that in the right, that's the way to go. And why do we need this agility? Well, just think about when we had the breakout of the pandemic. Certainly everything had to change. We had companies that needed our technology just to handle the volumes of transactions they certainly had to deal with. Companies in retail had to certainly kind of employ hundreds of thousands of new people that do all the logistics of supplying people with online orders and delivering that. The whole delivery system changed. Airlines certainly had to kind of cancel all the flights and to process all the vouchers and so forth. All those kind of, we constantly have a lot of change, and we need to be very prepared. The more flexible we are to change, the more we will be adopting to what the needs are of our economy and our markets. And so being able to accommodate that and operate for that in a large scale. So automation helps you to handle scale, correct scale, right? So when we say agility is one thing, but also certainly you can handle a peak of volume. You can do certain things that you couldn't do. That's also another feature why it is so powerful.
I think
And
there's
someone is
another.
asking, what's a fax machine? So I think the
I
best
think-
answer is I used to use them is a machine to send hard copy emails. So
I think there's another element to this as well that, Boris, you come from a sort of outsourcing background. I worked quite a lot in big shared services in my enterprise days. And I think back then it was all about headcount reduction, and it was, labor arbitrage, can we move people to other parts of the world and drive our transactional costs down? But this is very different, and to come back to the question, like, what's in it for me? Why do I want to work with technology or these bots at all? And I think more and more decisions are being based on the business benefit, not just internal to finance and shared services. They're looking at the non-financial benefit. They actually see a competitive edge with data. They see a competitive edge with, having analytics about their customer base. The value of their companies, on exit or in the market is greater because they have a data asset. Only got to look at, FANG, Google and Facebook and all that for that. Also, we're becoming much more customer centric. Even finance people are thinking about customers now. So, can I improve the customer experience with these sorts of interactions? Like whether it's a chat bot, managing a process that streamlines everything and reduces the sort of sign up time, I suppose. Why is that relevant to finance? Well, it might increase your revenue cycle. It might, reduce your payment cycle. So it improves your working capital. So I think more and more decisions are being based on non-financial benefits. And, the finance team should be backing this in terms of investment, understanding the ROI, but they should also be using it themselves. I think for too long, we see ourselves as back office and the poor cousin to the business. But now we've got an opportunity to change our entire businesses. And that goes all the way through to the finance operations and the information that we provide from finance. So, let's bring ourselves up the list a little bit.
Totally agree. I mean, that's exactly the point. So if you don't need to bother about all the basics kind of data handling, processing stuff, you can now look at exactly that point of, okay, what is the impact if we change this, or if that process runs this way? The process experts can come to the finance person. The finance person can then, kind of does an analysis and says, oh, well, this is how it would impact our revenues or not. This whole modeling Yeah, it's a tremendously exciting area. You did this in the past when we were talking about outsourcing, when you thought, okay, if we do this and this, and we had a finance guy who was kind of putting together those kind of calculations and understanding what benefit it is and so forth. It has to be broken down all to numbers in the end. And that's exactly where this expertise is in the finance team. And you're absolutely right. It's exciting. That's why I'm saying it's going to be sexy, because these guys are going to now, look at it and say, "Wow, you guys are you understand the numbers and how to put the correlation between something that we change in the way we operate and how that comes into financial to bear." But that also means that we're not just looking at RPA, say, automation tool skills, but RPA also helps you to understand the process relevance. And now as a finance person, you need to know, understand more. You become more like a consultant, asking about the process, understanding the process, so that you can break it down into numbers and what that means. It's going to be exciting, actually, right?
Yeah, great.
Yeah. No, I was just going. What Boris was saying, and actually what Chris was saying, just reminded me of a conversation that I had with someone, and it has to do with mindset. Because this is someone who was working in an accounts payable type role, and fairly standard but very deep process knowledge within a very small area, but they were doing various things within that. And they basically took the opportunity to get involved in an RPA project in their company, where they effectively automated away their own role. And this person was just explaining from their perspective that a lot of people in the team were very afraid that they're going to be made redundant or they're not going to be relevant anymore. But this person took a different mindset, which said, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to learn how, because I bring some kind of process expertise in this area, I'm going to use this opportunity to learn how RPA works. And they took that situation and converted it into a massive career boost for themselves. So I think there's something here about mindset towards technology as well, mindset towards understanding how technology can be part of the solution, and also understanding that as accountancy and finance professionals and as a function, the function has a lot to offer, and accountancy and finance professionals have a lot to offer. There aren't many people in an organization who can understand operations, who can understand finance, who can understand systems, who can understand ethics and risk. When you actually look at an organization, who's going to have all of those skills in one place? It's the accountancy and finance people. It's an incredibly powerful position to be in. And this is something that technology can really help bring to the fore. I think it's really exciting from that perspective as well. Provided the mindset is there.
Indeed.
Yeah.
We are almost at the end. You can add, Chris. Go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead, Chris.
Just one statement that I think, I think we're all in agreeing here. We should be part of a choir or something. But from my point of view, there's a lot of discussion about the changing role of the accountant and people coming through the finance profession. And we are analysts, we are analysts at heart. The research is there to say that we are a certain type of person, and certainly the incumbent roles have this sort of analytical ability, this deep knowledge, this expertise across the business, but also deep in finance. But there's a sort of trend to sort of say, well, look, can we throw all that out and you become a rock star CFO, or can you now be a great communicator and presenter, because that's what the business wants. And actually, I think that's falling a bit flat with some people, because it's like, well, actually, that's not what I do. It's not what I am. I know I need to communicate well, but actually, if I base this career change between being a presenter, rockstar CFO, or a data user and an analytics translator, I'm much more aligned to this change than this rockstar CFO approach. So I think, we need to understand the problem and go on our own journeys. And I actually see a massive opportunity aligned to our core skills, rather than having to change our entire being, on the data side, not necessarily the communicator side, even though we do have to communicate data science and data well. But again, that's more aligned to the data and what we currently do, rather than oversimplifying this and saying, you know, just communicate with the business better, be a rock star CFO. That's kind of what people want. I challenge that.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a whole spectrum, and there's place for people. You know, you have attention for detail, right? So apply now the attention for detail to put numbers in this field or whatever now into an algorithm and how that works with numbers. That's the only change you're going to now learn, and then that's a kind of a change. So all these, the spectrum of your particular skill being more the person who deep dives in numbers and likes that, or being more the person of, you know, who is the rockstar CFO kind of presenting, communicating, that whole spectrum, it will still be there. There's nothing going to change in that area.
Yeah, I think there's something here about authenticity. So I think people have to be authentic to themselves. People have to be authentic to what their passions are and what their interests are, and also recognize what the accountancy profession is there to provide, and to be true to that as well. You can't suddenly walk away from that, because I think that's not authentic either.
And we are almost at the end, actually, of this webinar. I was a bit afraid maybe we have too much time, but actually I think we can add an extra hour. It's such an interesting discussion. But before we close the webinar, a question to all of you. What would be your main advice to people who are now attending this webinar in order to be successful in this field? Maybe Chris, let's start with you. Yeah. No, Boris, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. So our whole vision is about democratizing. So all the trainings, the online trainings of software, how to use it, the software itself, the community, it's all free. So you can download it, you can play around, you can explore. So there's no stopping in actually learning right away about it. So so just go right at it.
Yeah,
great.
I would echo that. I would echo that. I think it's, you know, education. You know, the more we understand the basics, that's all we're asking here, really. The basics about, you know, the opportunity, the trends, you know, whether it's RPA and AI, or whether it's data analytics, data visualization, you know, all these things, you know, are your first port of call. Just understand what they are, the definitions of what they are, and be curious about them, because like I said, there's a massive opportunity, and at least learn the basics so you can decide I'm in or I'm out, you know.
Yeah, great. Jenan, what's your
Yeah,
advice?
no, I totally agree with what Boris and Chris have said. I mean, ACCA has been around for over 100 years. And in that time, many technologies have come and many technologies have gone, and accountants is still progressing through the ranks, and the number of members has steadily increased through those technologies. So if that tells me one thing, it is that, you know, accountants are very good at working with technology, understand what the accountant can bring as a human being in terms of judgment, in terms of their skill, and then use the technology in order to amplify and to fill in the blanks where the technology is better at doing that. So it's about partnering with it and using it, but understanding that the accountancy profession brings a lot more.
Great. I love the advice. It's all about education indeed. So thank you all for attending this webinar. Also, thank you to all the attendees for asking all those questions. Thank you for that. We couldn't answer them all, but I see that someone is asking for a report. We will share that as well, of course. So thank you all. Bernardin, over to you.
Alon's already started saying thank you. So with this impressive panel, we have come to the end of this webinar. Let me thank Alon Mulder for chairing the panel, and of course our esteemed panelists, Christopher Argent, Boris Krumrey, and Narayanan Bajanasan for sharing their insights. Thank you once again to UiPath for partnering with IMA in today's webinar. And lastly, thank you to all participants who joined us from all over Europe. Let me note that IMA members will your CPE will be added in just a couple of weeks, and I hope to see you again on one of our future webinars. Once again, thank you for your participation, and remember, automation is here, and the developments, it will go faster and faster, so don't let the transformation pass you. Good luck, stay safe, and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.